Welcome to this Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of literature's absolute wildest psychological breakdowns, Shakespeare's Macbeth. We're going to trace exactly how unchecked ambition can just completely destroy a human mind piece by piece.
All right, let's kick things off with the ultimate hook. All hail Macbeth, thou that shalt be king hereafter. Just think about those words for a second. Uttered by three withered, unearthly witches, this tiny little sentence acts as a dark, irresistible seed of ambition, one that's eventually going to tear a whole kingdom apart.
Chapter 1. The Witch's Dark Prophecy.
So picture Macbeth. He's a loyal, victorious Scottish general heading home from brutal combat, right? Suddenly, out on this desolate heath, he's hit with three wild prophecies. He'll be Thane of Cawdor, he'll be king hereafter, and his buddy Banquo's kids will be kings, even though Banquo himself won't be. Now focus on that first one, Thane of Cawdor. Almost immediately after hearing this, King Duncan actually gives Macbeth that exact title as a reward for his bravery on the battlefield. Boom. Just like that, the witches are validated. Suddenly, becoming king, that huge second prophecy, doesn't seem so crazy anymore. It feels terrifyingly real. The psychological seed has officially taken root.
Chapter 2. Plotting the King's Murder.
So how exactly does a loyal general take the throne while the current king is still, breathing? Well, Lady Macbeth totally nails her husband's dilemma here. She knows he's ambitious, sure, but she's worried he's just too gentle, too full of the milk of human kindness to actually assassinate his king, who also happens to be his guest. Her cold, absolute ruthlessness completely clashes with Macbeth's heavy hesitation. She basically becomes the dangerous driving force that shoves him right over the moral edge.
But here's a really fascinating, often overlooked moment of vulnerability. Lady Macbeth actually sneaks into the king's chamber, dagger in hand, totally ready to do the deed herself. But she freezes. Why? Because the peacefully sleeping King Duncan actually looks like her own dead father. It's a huge psychological block for her. And this one intensely human moment of hesitation means Macbeth has to step up and physically commit the murder himself, pretty much sealing his own psychological doom. The thing is, Macbeth is already coming unglued. As he creeps through the dark, he has this horrifying hallucination, a literal blood-dripping dagger floating in thin air, its point turned right toward his own heart. The psychological spotlighting here is absolutely crucial. His mind is violently fracturing from the guilt and horror before he even strikes the fatal blow. It perfectly captures how his towering ambition is in an all-out war with his conscience. Chapter 3. The Crown and the Guilt. All right, the deed is done. The king is dead. But look at how completely differently this initial shock hits our two main characters. On one hand, you've got Lady Macbeth. She's practical, commanding, basically just saying, hey, wash the blood off, put on your nightgown, and let's act normal to avoid suspicion. She is operating purely on survival mode. But Macbeth, he is instantly, utterly broken. He stares at his blood-stained hands and actually fears that all of great Neptune's ocean couldn't wash them clean. He's in such a crazed panic, he thinks his hands would literally turn the entire sea red. He gets it immediately. He can never, ever wash away the moral stain of this martyr. Chapter 4. Paranoia and Ghostly Visions.
So, Macbeth gets the crown. Prophecy number 2? Check. But man, it triggers an unescapable snowball of violence. Just trace this escalation with me. Night 1, King Duncan is murdered. To cover his tracks, by the very next morning, Macbeth slays Duncan's 2 innocent drugged guards, claiming he did it out of a furious rage of loyalty. Crazy, right? And then, remember that third prophecy, the one about Banquo's kids becoming kings? Macbeth's guilt and intense jealousy make him terrified of his old friend, so later on he secretly hires assassins to ambush and murder Banquo. The pacing of his tyranny just skyrockets. One crime absolutely demands another just to keep his secret safe, locking him into this endless, brutal cycle of bloodshed.
But you can't just have your best friend murdered and casually move on with your life. At a massive royal banquet, surrounded by his chief nobles, Macbeth's paranoia literally manifests itself. A terrified Macbeth hallucinates the gory, blood-stained ghost of Banquo sitting right there in his reserved chair. Macbeth completely loses it in front of all his lords, screaming at empty air. Lady Macbeth frantically tries to do damage control, playing it off as some momentary childhood illness he's had forever. But it's no use. It's a total, very public collapse, and it definitely signals the beginning of the end for his reign.
Chapter 5. The Witch's Final Trick.
Desperate, Terrified and sensing that his nobles are turning against him, Macbeth heads back to the wild heath to find the witch's cave. They conjure up these infernal spirits to give him 3 new warnings. First up, beware Macduff, a nobleman who fled to England. Second, be bold, because no one born of a woman in the ordinary way can harm him. And third, Macbeth will never be vanquished until the actual forest, Birnam Wood, physically moves to his castle at High Dunsinane Hill. Notice how these build up? Macbeth takes them totally at face value. I mean, forests can't walk, right? And literally everyone is born of a woman. This manipulative little wordplay gives him a massive, completely arrogant sense of invincibility. But here is the crucial turning point. While Macbeth is growing ruthlessly bold from these new prophecies, Lady Macbeth's mind is completely collapsing under the delayed weight of her earlier actions. She starts sleepwalking, tormented by horrible dreams, constantly washing her hands trying to get rid of imaginary blood. "Out, damned spot," she mutters, crying that all the perfumes of Arabia couldn't sweeten her little hand. That intense guilt she brutally pushed down early on, it finally surfaces, totally destroying her sanity and, tragically, leading to her wretched death. Chapter 6. The Fall of Macbeth. So the English army, led by the murdered king's son Malcolm and a very vengeful Macduff, is marching right on the castle. But Macbeth? He still thinks he's untouchable. Now watch how these seemingly impossible prophecies are brutally torn apart. First, to hide their massive numbers, Malcolm orders his soldiers to cut down branches from the trees of Birnam Wood and carry them as they march. From a distance, it literally looks exactly like the forest is moving toward Dunsinane. Then, when Macbeth finally faces Macduff in hand-to-hand combat and actually brags about his charmed life against anyone born of a woman, Macduff drops the hammer. He reveals the fatal loophole. He wasn't of ordinary birth. He was surgically taken from his mother's womb before due time. The witch's words? Technically true, but entirely maliciously misleading. Macbeth realizes way too late that the evil spirits played him, exploiting his ambition and twisting the truth right before he falls to Macduff's sword. Which leaves us with the ultimate question. Was it fate that doomed Macbeth, or just the inescapable avalanche of his own unchecked ambition? Did the witches force his hand, or did they simply plant a dark idea that his own desires fed and watered? It's such a brilliant psychological puzzle. Take that question with you, and I really hope this explainer leaves you eager to dive even deeper into this incredible piece of classic literature.